Welcome to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I'm your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. On our pages, we have the most cost-effective job posting board, listing hundreds of open student services positions, a wide range of webinars, and a virtual exhibit hall. On today's program, I am very happy to have Dr. Laura Veau. She is the founder of the boutique consulting firm, Fortify Associates. She is the former vice president of student affairs at Mount Ida College and currently an instructor in the higher ed programs at Boston College and Boston University. Welcome to the program, Laura.
Nice to be here, Stu. Thank you for having me.
So, Laura, what is your one thing?
My one thing is process. The important thing is the process. Reason I say that is you can talk a good game, but unless you actually make things happen, people aren't going to trust you. They're not going to trust your organization. They're not going to trust the Division of Student Affairs for doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's really up to the process, and sound process matters more than anything.
Is there a story or is there something that occurred in your professional career where you had that epiphany?
It actually happened when I was interviewing to be the director of residence life at Mount Ida College. So this was summer of 2008. And in student affairs, we have this really ridiculous thing called a community interview. And you show up and I've had a community interviews where there's been 3 people and when there's been close to 300 people. And in this particular case, there was probably about 50 people in the room. And one of the people asked me, well, what defines you from other candidates for this job? And I said, well, I believe that process matters and that how you actually do your work matters. And you have to have good processes. And I said that I've been fortunate enough in my career that I've learned from institutions that had sound processes. I've been able to augment these processes and I've become better at it. And I think that that's something I bring to the table. And the then vice president for enrollment services said, well, then, this is a small institution. We don't really care about process. We care about relationships. So we're very relationship driven here. And me being me, Stu, and you've known me long enough, I said, well, then I'm not your girl. Like, I'm not the person you want for this job. But I went on to say, based on my visit to your institution, based on me speaking to your students, I actually disagree. Is that the fact of the matter is you have students here who think that relationships are actually what gets you up in line, that get you the work to get done for you. If someone is, say, not the work study student for the vice president for enrollment services, they don't have access to power and therefore they don't have access to process. They don't get access to the things getting done for them. That shouldn't happen. Sound process means people will start to trust in your organization and will start to trust in the work you do. And then when you want to try to do something aspirational, well, then proof's in the pudding. You've done good work. They say this office, this part of our campus has done good stuff. Why don't we give them a try? Why don't we give it a shot? And that's where it really kind of came to me, especially after talking to these students who said, the Office of Residence Life, I don't trust them because they don't do things for everybody. They do stuff for the people they know. And that really kind of lit it up in my head. I already knew that I was process oriented, but then that idea of taking what's process oriented and the student process and the student experience and being student centered, you can be process oriented and student centered at the same time, which a lot of people may not understand. There's a connection there.
I'm assuming you got the job.
Yeah.
I think what you said is important, that you can have the process and the relationship. They're not
mutually exclusive. We always talk about you need this, not this. And I said, how about this and this? You need this and. We need to be better about the this and statement rather than the this or. And when it comes to process, I think process it's not sexy. Process isn't sexy. Relationships, like, oh, that person's so great. I love that person. That person's off the chain. That person's amazing. I'm not saying you can't have all that, but you can't just be relationship driven without having process alongside it. I've worked in very large universities and I've worked in very tiny ones and I've worked in various things in between. And I know the process, and going back to my point that process is important, good process should be scalable. Good process, if it works in a teeny tiny campus, scaling up should be something that can be done without a lot of drama and trauma. And the same thing is if it's a well-done process, you should be able to scale down and be able to implement it on a small campus with limited, maybe human resources to actually get the work done.
Laura, I want to thank you for sharing your one thing. I think it's so important that people, especially maybe grad students, new professionals that are coming in and maybe looking more towards the relationship, collegiality, and pushing process to the side, maybe focus on the process because the relationships can come later. Let's get everything down pat first, and then we can proceed.
I firmly believe that once process is fine-tuned and done as well, it creates a sense of trust, and trust builds relationships.
Laura, again, thank you. I've been speaking with Dr. Laura Veau, the founder of the boutique consulting firm Fortify Associates, also former vice president of student affairs at Mount Ida College, instructor at both BC and BU. You have been listening to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I've been your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. I hope you will join us next time for another episode of the Student Affairs One Thing.